Additional bit of something to eat before coming out and doing this program. It's gotten to be a tradition and a very comfortable routine. Harold and Tina, as Harold just mentioned, have been doing the programming for this club for about 20 years, which is a pretty outstanding service to the group. Thank you. Because that's how this all works, right? I mean, everybody knows that. You folks who are new here, this is a volunteer organization. Nobody here is getting paid. They do this because they enjoy each other's company and they recognize the value in sharing information this way. You know, there are some things, if you want to learn how to do it, you're going to have to pay for a teacher and take lessons and what have you. And you may end up doing that in bonsai too. You can. That opportunity is there. But you have this other system in place, this club system, which is kind of an anachronism, you know, these kind of social organizations where people voluntarily come together to share an interest. That's not a strong part of our social fabric anymore. It's too bad because it's a very useful thing. And it's members like Harold and Tina, like the other officers who are now stepping down, Steve Zeisel. These people take time, and it's no easier for them than it would be for you, right? To step up and give time and give labor to keep this organization healthy. I'll tell you, as somebody who gets around and sees a fair number of these kind of groups, this is a very, very well-run organization. And it shows in your membership. I go and talk to clubs sometimes and there's 6 people in the audience, you know? And they've had the same president for 10 years. And there might be some relationship between those two facts. Right? So it's a good thing that your organization is as vibrant as it is, has the people who step up and contribute and carry the load for a little while, and has this mechanism that apparently works very, very well at bringing new people in through the door. You may or may not know what a challenging thing that is for one of these kind of social organizations, to keep new blood constantly flowing in. This is not just bonsai groups, it's other civic organizations, garden clubs, I speak to a lot of them, and predominantly the audience is older, right? And they're always hungry for new members. And they say, how do we get new members to come? Well, your club has found a pretty good solution to that. It seems to be, I'm here every year after the state fair, and there's always new folks who come from the state fair. They've seen the bonsai there, they enjoy it, they say, hey, check that out. They come to a meeting, maybe they never come back, especially, you know, they come to the November meeting. I don't take personal responsibility. You know, people sample things, right? You know that. You've probably done it yourself. It's like you get a passing interest. I'll look into that. I remember being a member of the Asheville Mushroom Club for one meeting. They hooked me in. They had a publication. And it was I forget the name of it, the Asheville Mushroom Club newsletter or something. And then in small letters underneath it said, printed sporadically.
You mentioned the expo.
That's all right.
What a great expo.
Yes.
Once again.
Yes. You know, the timing of this visit is interesting in a number of ways, and one of them is that it always follows the expo. And this was the 22nd Carolina Bonsai Expo at the North Carolina Arboretum in Nashville, if you hadn't heard of it or haven't been to one. 22nd year in a row that we did it. And your club has been a participating member from the very beginning. So this is one of the charter organizations of that show. And that show's done pretty well for itself. You know, we set attendance records this year. It's kind of a crapshoot to say how many people came, but thousands, you know, estimated 3,500 people on Saturday, and I don't know about Sunday, but it usually is about the same. Now here in Raleigh-Durham area, that might not sound like a whole lot of people, but that's the most people who come to the Arboretum for any weekend of the year.
Right.
And that's been an established thing now for a while. That's bonsai succeeding, you know, in a marketplace of sort. right? We put the bonsai out there, we say, hey, we're having a show, and people turn out to see it. And it works because organizations like yours pitch in, volunteer. And again, you know, Harold and Gabriel and Steve and other people involved in it, they don't get paid to do that. They, you know, your club willingly participates, and I really appreciate it.
Don was our chairperson this year.
Did he get paid?
Was that supposed to?
He just got his pat on the back.
And our exhibit
Yes.
was in with the.
Well, it was chosen as the best in show by our guest artist, Jack Sustick, who was curator of the U.S. National Arboretum Bonsai Collection, the National Collection, for 14 years, so you might suppose he knows what he's looking at. And he chose your group's display as the best in show this year, so congratulations
Thanks,
to you.
Don.
All right.
So another aspect of coming to see you at this time of year, it's very pleasant driving across the state and seeing all the autumn leaves. You know, it was a very colorful ride here today. But it's also kind of a nostalgic time of year, right? This change of seasons, you're watching the growing season come to a close, get this pretty show, and you know what comes next. The trees will be bare for the next 5-6 months. It's all fine, you know, we anticipate it, but still when you're in that transition season and you're seeing the old go away, it's hard not to have some feelings of melancholy or nostalgia. And I had plenty of time, right, just driving down the road, think about these things. And I was thinking about the 22nd Expo, the 23rd time I'm coming to talk to your club. And as it happens, Jeff in the back there is one of those terrible people who keeps notes. And he came up to me just a few minutes ago and showed me notes that he took from that 1995 meeting. Right? He said, hope they don't get this guy back again. But in his notes, he said I was talking about the collection, you know, which at that time was a pretty nascent entity. We started with bonsai at the Arboretum in 1992, just about this time of year. It was actually election night, 1992, when I and another member of the Arboretum staff drove out to Butner, North Carolina, to bring back the collection that had been donated to us, which was the start of our bonsai efforts. All right, so some of this is very repetitive to people like Jim, who's been sitting there for 23 years now, waiting for something new. But for those of you who are new here to this club and maybe don't know about the Arboretum in Nashville and the bonsai collection there, that was our start. We got a donation of a private individual's collection. And this person was an elderly woman. She had been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and her family, you know, didn't want the responsibility for their mom's trees, didn't know who to turn to, and by accident, I mean, it was just a serendipitous thing, somebody from their family spoke on the phone to somebody who worked at the Arboretum, and it, you know, it was just a connection that was made out of thin air. And they said, oh, you know, by the way, our mother has these really expensive, fancy little plants, and she's not going to be around very long, and we want something to do with them, you know. We'd hate anything bad to happen to them. Can you think your Arboretum would be interested? And we were so new then, so new, that those of you who are familiar with the Arboretum, let me tell you, if you were there for the expo, say, if you were to transport yourself, if you were to stand out in front of the education center where the exhibit was held and transport yourself back to 1992, well, you'd fall down from the shock, right? Because the only thing of all that you could see from that vantage point, the only thing that was there in 1992 was that big building, the education center. There was no parking lot, there were no gardens, there were no trails. There was basically nothing but this massive empty building sitting out in the middle of the forest. And nobody came unless they were lost. It's no joke. The first couple of years I worked there, I started there in 1990. So the first couple of years I worked there, the only people we saw were people who were lost trying to find Lake Powhatan, which is the national recreation area down the road from us. They drive up, we say, hey, how you doing? You know, it's like a shock to see people. Where's Lake Powhatan? We say, oh, yeah, down the road a couple more miles. And that was where we were at. And then here's this offer for a bonsai collection. And because we were at that stage, it was kind of like, yeah, sure, we'll look into that, right?
We'll figure it out.
Not me. I didn't have anything to do with it. The boss went there with some members of the local bonsai club and a fellow named John Creech, who I won't even start talking about because if you don't know who he was, I don't have the time to tell you. But he was a really important and good fellow, and they all went down to look at this bonsai collection. Now, our director didn't have any idea about bonsai at all. Dr. Creech had a pretty good idea, and the local club members, they did too, and they were all really enthusiastic. He said, yeah, you should take this. So he said, well, I got to run it by our board. This is our director talking. He says, I have to run this by our board before we make a decision. Do you mind if we take some of the plants back to Asheville and put them out on display for our next board meeting so the board members can see what these are and see if we want to get involved? And the family was very reluctant. They wanted assurances that the plants would come back quickly and no damage and so forth. And they allowed it to happen. So about 15 of them came back to the Arboretum and were set up. And the board came and looked at it and said, yeah, sure, why not? Because there was nothing else. The place was empty. Nobody was coming. It was a feeling like, well, we got to have something, right? People have to have something to look at. We have no gardens. They got to have something to look at. So let's take on these strange plants and see how it goes.